Howdy folks, how can I help?
Is your legislation
Your
distracting?
legislation is simplistic and it doesn't deal with the hard issues facing New Zealanders. What do you say to that?
Well, first of all, equal rights for all New Zealanders is a simple idea, but it's also a very powerful one. It also enables us to overcome many of the other challenges that we face.
Does this legislation undermine the ability for the government to focus on those issues like the economy and law and order?
No, I think the government's doing a very good job of focusing on the economy and law and order. I think the ACT Party and its ministers are making a very good contribution to that. For example, Nicole McKee bringing back 3 strikes, me fixing up foreign investment so we get more money for New Zealand workers to work with and earn. You know, right across the board, the government's doing a great job on these tough isures, and ACT, I would say, is making a disproportionately large contribution to it.
Says it's not helpful.
Does it undermine the coalition that you and the Prime Minister are fighting in public?
It would if that was true, but unfortunately that's the news you'd like to report, not what's actually happening.
PM says it's not
you've
helpful.
called him, hang on, you've called him anti-democratic, you've called him too scared to have a debate, and he's called your bill simplistic and a distraction. How's that not fighting in public?
Well, first of all, I've never called him anything like that.
You
what I have
absolutely
said,
did in an
no,
interview
I've
with
said,
Free News, actually.
I've said that certain actions, I believe, were wrong. For example, I've said it's undemocratic to make up your mind on a bill before you've seen it. But you know, now they've seen it and they've confirmed their view. Good on them.
So, sorry, can you answer my question? Is it distracting of the government for you and the Prime Minister to be out there every day fighting each other in public?
Well, it would be if that's true, but you know, that's the story you want to report. It's not the one that's happening. Sorry.
How do you categorise you calling the Prime Minister a scaredy cat and
Well, see, I've
undemocratic?
never called him a scaredy cat,
Sorry.
and that's
Too
exactly that's you trying to create
afraid
the news,
well,
not report the news.
No,
Anyone
it's
else got a
it's
question
not-
about
it's
what's
not
actually happening?
You said he was
Yes,
too afraid to
Tom.
take on the big
David,
issues.
the Prime Minister said this morning, I'll quote him, "You do not negate with a single stroke of a pen 184 years of debate and discussion with a bill that I think is very simplistic." How do you respond to that?
Well, first of all, as I've said, it is a simple idea that we should all be equal before the law. That's why I encourage people to read the bill. The second point I'd make is that actually I think you do need some underlying foundations. You do need to be able to say that these are the underlying principles, our constitutional settings that everything else flows from. Right now, we say that our government has to follow a partnership model where you have a different role based on who your ancestors were. I don't think that works. So in some ways he's right, it is simplistic, but it's also really important.
Do you think that Māori should lead a discussion about a constitutional future?
No, I think human beings should lead a discussion about the constitution under which they have to live. What I'm tired of is people being endlessly categorised by ancestry. That is what we're opposing here.
Are you going to feel a
Yeah.
bit alone in there in Parliament this afternoon as the only party basically advocating for this up against a wall of opposition?
You know what, a lot of times in my career it's felt a bit like that, but I've always known there's a lot of people out there who believe in equal rights for all New Zealanders, who believe that each person is a thinking and valuing being who deserves the same dignity. And what's more, that countries are better able to solve all of their problems when people are unleashed and allowed to solve their own
So
problems.
do you think that the Prime Minister is out of touch with the public?
No, I think the Prime Minister's in touch with the public on a range of issues. On this issue of the Treaty Principles Bill, we clearly have different views, and I know people would like to make a meal of that, but I actually think having more civil disagreement and being able to have different views and yet still work together on a bunch of other issues is a really important and mature thing. Maybe people aren't used to seeing that, but it's still good.
Do you
know?
believe he's in touch on this issue?
On this particular issue, I think there's a division between people's views, as there should be on any important issue. I mean, you know, throughout my career, I've taken on issues where people have had different views, but nonetheless, we managed to work through it and get to a good consensus in the end. And I suspect that will happen with this issue.
The issues that you've taken on in the past, though, have dealt with issues of conscience, right? This
Not
is
just that, no. Look, you know, I stood 1 against 119 on the firearm laws, and I think in
Do you not
hindsight
think
I
that's
was
an
right
issue
to
of-
do that.
Do you not think that firearms legislation was an issue of conscience after a massacre of 51 people?
Well, you could make that argument, but that's not the way that conscience is normally used in the context of parliamentary votes, and you know that.
Sorry,
So-
the main
Ah.
thing that you've used as an example here is euthanasia, but in
Oh.
this instance, we're talking about.
I didn't bring up euthanasia at all. You did.
David, can
Right
I-
now,
Yeah,
right
sorry,
now,
yeah.
you're just impossible to answer.
Hikoi organisers say that they didn't want to speak to you, not because you can't speak Māori, but because your lack of real means that you can't understand the treaty te tiriti o Waitangi. What's your response to that?
Well, I think if that was true, that would be a real problem, because it means that 90% plus 95% of New Zealanders don't understand the constitutional settings of their country. If that's true, then we've got to find a way to bring everyone into the discussion, and the way that we've done that traditionally, I always go by Professor Sihu Kafuru's translation, which is a very good translation of Te Tiriti from Te Reo Māori into modern English, and I've always relied on that, as has the Waitangi Tribunal.
Based on the past year of discourse, how do you think the next 6 months are going to go at Select Committee?
Look, I think people are going to be surprised on the upside. There's always people that want to try and ramp up the conflict and look for trouble where it's not really there. But nonetheless, when New Zealanders get together, they tend to want to have mature discussions about the future of their country, and that's what we're here for.
David, do you think that this bill would help get New Zealand back on track?
I beg your pardon?
David, do you think that this bill would help get New Zealand back on track?
Well, I don't want to you're trying to get me to use someone else's election slogan, but what I would say is that we actually need to have a clear understanding of what our founding document means, and I don't think it's sustainable to have a conception of the Treaty of Waitangi that it creates a partnership between races, as many people have said, because I don't think it works in the long term to group people together based on ancestry and average them out. I'm against that.
You said to RNZ today that without this bill there wouldn't be a coalition. Is that true?
Well,
you would have forced the country back to the polls?
Well, we made a decision, and everything in the coalition is now designed to make sure that we know what we can expect from each other. So, in a sense, that is absolutely true. Everyone keeps their commitments.
New Zealand back to the polls?
No, I just meant that everyone keeps their commitments in this coalition government.
That's not what you said. You said without this bill we wouldn't have a coalition. So would you force New Zealand back to the polls without it?
No, what I'm saying is that every single commitment is being honoured by every single party. I know this government is working a lot better than people would like it to on the opposition benches, but nonetheless we keep our commitments, and if we didn't, we wouldn't have a government. That is true.
If there was a break of the commitment and National decided to let its MPs vote with their conscience, would that break the coalition?
Look, it would be a major breach, and we'd have to have a very serious conversation about whether we can trust each other to keep our commitments, all of which we've done up until now. All right, folks, thank you very much.